Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening, either in person or watching this later on our video. We really appreciate you being here tonight to engage with the Edmonds School District as we talk about our comprehensive plan for safety, and we're grateful for you attending tonight. I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement this evening. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Snohomish people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes, who since time immemorial have taken care of, hunted, fished, and gathered on these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. By acknowledging these homelands, we commit to working with tribal nations to further the education aims they have identified in our classrooms and schools. My name is Rebecca Miner, and I'm the interim superintendent here in Edmonds, and I'm so pleased to be here tonight with Greg Schwab to share some really important information with you. Originally, most of this information was presented with our board in a study session on safety, and they suggested that we kind of take this show out so that other people can see it either on video or in person and watch this important information. So I'm just going to briefly go over our agenda before I turn it over to Greg tonight. We want to present a review of comprehensive approach to school safety. This will include preventative measures that we engage in, protective measures, mitigation measures, our response to emergency situations, and post-emergency recovery measures. And with that, I'll turn it over to Greg Schwab, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Miner. So one of the things that we want to talk about tonight before we get started is the connection that safety has to our school district's strategic plan. Tonight's presentation has a very strong connection, especially with our focus on belonging. One of the things that we can help to do to ensure that our students feel belonging and connection to school is by ensuring that they have a place where they feel safe and that we have strong plans to keep them safe. The topics we're going to talk about tonight highlight the efforts we engage in to provide our students with a sense of safety and to help protect students when there are incidents at our schools that we need to respond to. So let's talk first about preventive measures. What are the things that we do to prevent risks from happening in our schools? And this is always our initial response. And as you can see from our list, our preventive measures are quite significant. We want to be as proactive as possible in responding to the potential for these things to take place in our schools. And so some examples of the measures that we take that are preventive in nature include using our Safe Schools tip line. We use a system called Vector Alert, which allows students, staff, families, and community to report anonymously using text message, email, voicemail, or simply responding through the website if they have a concern or want to notify us about something they feel we should know about. We also use Panorama data. Panorama is a survey that we give to our students 3 times each school year, and it provides us with information about our students' social and emotional health and well-being. And among the data we collect in Panorama are student concerns about school safety, and schools have the ability to use this information to develop plans and interventions to support students. One of the key features of Panorama also is what we call a raise your hand tool. This allows students to indicate that there's someone that they would like to talk to someone if there's something they're concerned about. And so this allows us the opportunity to follow up specifically with those students. Our school counselors play a critical role in helping to ensure the safety of our students and are a critical preventive measure for us. We have taken the initial step this school year of increasing our staffing levels for our school counselors, and we're going to continue to increase our counseling levels over the next 3 years to lower the caseloads for our students so that our counselors can see more students at one time. In addition, we have school psychologists who work to support our students at the elementary level. They're involved in the comprehensive support of student needs. And at the secondary level, our school psychologists focus to work on reducing barriers for students with disabilities. They engage in data collection, behavior and mental health interventions, and they work with diverse learners to support academic achievement as well as behavioral and mental health. School psychologists can also be a resource for improving school climate and connectedness. And our school psychologists also serve on our Prepare and student safety teams. We also have social workers. We employ 4 of them, 1 for each quadrant of our school district. And these social workers provide us with another resource for supporting our students' mental health needs. In addition, we have family resource advocates. Family resource advocates provide holistic support to students and families and assist them with accessing resources in the community. This contributes to student well-being and safety by eliminating barriers that may be preventing a student from accessing school. We also have school nurses that contribute to our sense of safety, and school nurses focus on things including environmental health. This includes things like managing communicable disease outbreaks, which we've just been through, injury prevention, supporting our school health needs during an emergency, and in these ways, our school nurses are an important component of our preventive approach to school safety. We also have very strong partnerships with community mental health providers. Compass Health and Therapeutic Health Services are 2 agencies that we contract with and provide our students with access to licensed mental health therapists who provide ongoing therapeutic treatment for students within our schools. We also utilize a service called Care Solace. Care Solace is a concierge referral service we have used since the outset of the pandemic. What it does is provides our school staff with the ability to refer students to outside mental health services through a website, and Care Solace then helps to make connections to available providers who can meet students' mental health needs in the community. We also have very strong partnerships with our law enforcement departments. We have very strong collaborative relationships, and one of the ways that we are supporting this work in our schools is through a school liaison officer program. Our school liaison officers are officers in our communities that are assigned to patrol areas, including schools, and they will make periodic visits to those schools. You'll see them at lunches, you'll see them at recesses at elementary schools. They may be at assemblies, and they're also there to provide assistance to staff with emergency planning. And one of the things that we use to, with the advent of technology, although the last couple of weeks have been a little bit difficult to get online, but we do have access to our students, given our students access to the internet with Chromebooks. We also know that we need to be aware of what our students are doing online, and so we've engaged a service called Securely 24. This service actively monitors what our students are doing online, and if they see something that is concerning, the service will notify school principals that there's something that needs to be followed up on. For example, on a recent weekend this fall, along with one of our principals, I received a text message and an email from Securely 24 notifying us that we had a student who was actively searching for ways to commit suicide. Based on the level of concern and the fact that this was on a weekend, Securely 24 also notified law enforcement. In the end, the school was able to intervene, and the student was connected with resources to help support them. So I want to stop there and ask you just to take a moment and turn and talk to someone that you're sitting next to you about something you learned or something you may have a question about. All right. So in addition to our preventive measures, there are things that we do to protect our environment in our schools and to address potential threats or risks. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do there to make sure that we are protecting our students, our staff, and our schools. One of the first things we do is we've engaged in physical upgrades of all of our existing school sites. These have taken the form of surveillance cameras to monitor our school sites, access controls for buildings that can limit visitor access during the school day, and fencing projects that will create a more secure campus. In addition to existing building upgrades, our district's facilities department regularly reviews the latest industry recommendations regarding security and safety in the design of new school buildings, and we've incorporated many of those designs in the new construction of schools that has taken place here in Edmonds. We also employ specific staff who are entrusted with protecting our students, staff, and facilities. We have a safety and emergency preparedness specialist that focuses on supporting schools in the development of emergency plans, ensuring that monthly drills are conducted, and assists in the management of specific emergency situations that may arise in our schools. In addition, we also have school security coordinators at each of our comprehensive high schools, and they support schools by providing overall campus supervision during the school day. When our schools encounter specific threats to the safety of our students, staff, and schools, we utilize a threat assessment protocol. This protocol addresses threats in a timely and appropriate manner and in collaboration with law enforcement. We utilize a student safety team comprised of 2 school psychologists who have extensive training in the threat assessment process to provide support to schools as they conduct threat assessments, and we also have partnerships with local law enforcement to provide us with support when threat assessments need to engage police to better understand the nature of threats that students may present to our schools. Our threat assessment protocol has the following components. We do an initial assessment to determine the nature and the degree of the threat. We take initial action to counter or mitigate any potential threat. We contact police. We implement measures to keep the school safe, and sometimes this means removing a student that has made a threat from school while we investigate. We do an investigation. We make sure that we notify any potential subjects of a threat. We do a risk assessment. And finally, we develop a safety plan. The goal of any threat assessment is to ultimately return a student to school, but we want to do so safely and make sure that the school community, the students, and the student making the threat are all safe. And that's the goal of the safety plan. And lastly, we've engaged in a visitor management system here in Edmonds. In Edmonds, we recognize the value of our volunteers. And so we require all of our volunteers to go through volunteer application and criminal background checks to ensure that they have been cleared to volunteer in our schools. And we ask to make sure that all of our visitors sign in at the main office as soon as they enter our schools. So I wanted to ask you to take a moment and just share something you may have noticed at your school related to your school's protective measures. Yeah. 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 Good. I'm glad that is well received. Let's talk about mitigation measures. Mitigation measures are those things we do to ensure that we're minimizing the potential impact that may be caused by an incident in one of our schools. So one of the first things that we do in accordance with state law is we ensure that all schools perform safety drills each month. In our drill plan, we provide schools with specific guidance and suggestions for ways to approach each drill. So for example, most of our drills we do during class time when kids are in class. Many emergencies aren't going to happen when kids are in class. So we encourage staff to practice drills at other times like lunches or during passing times or times that are more difficult to actually conduct a drill. But we really want to practice these drills in real life kinds of situations. So we provide our staff, our principals and assistant principals with guidelines and specific things to think about as they practice these drills each month. To help manage emergency situations, we rely on the use of what's called an incident command system. Incident command is an organizational system that was actually developed by the federal government to respond to emergencies and incidents. It is a national system that all public agencies use in the creation of their emergency plans. And the written plan includes some really specific task-driven job descriptions and an organizational chart to ensure that all aspects of an emergency situation are addressed. We also utilize a system called Rapid Responder, which is a statewide online system where all of our drills are entered to help us ensure compliance with state mandates. As well, this system also documents each school building information for use by first responders. So for example, we have building maps, we have where our utility shutoffs are, all those important things that we need to know in an emergency our first responders have easy access to them because they're available online. Each school is carefully mapped, including those things such as shutoffs, safety shutoffs for power and water. We also utilize a communication tool called Easy Alert for our staff, and it allows us to communicate during emergencies and incidents at our facilities. Easy Alert is a web-based tool that allows us to collaborate and communicate during any type of an emergency, medical, natural disaster, active shooter situation, or others. It has the ability to allow staff to communicate through a chat feature, share images, and report GPS positions. We can also access emergency plans and critical facility information from rapid responder. And finally, it provides us with a log and a report of activities in real time for after-action reviews so we can learn and improve from situations. And lastly, in any emergency situation, we have the ability to open up what we call our Emergency Operations Center. We have 2 sites that we will operate an EOC from. The first one is at the district office, and the second one is at our Maintenance and Transportation building. The reason we do this is because in an emergency situation, we may not be able to communicate with cell phones or landline telephones. And so we have the ability through radio communication. All of our schools have repeater radios. As well, we have what we call power fail phones that will allow us to communicate with schools in the event that we lose ability to communicate in other ways. All right, we're going to shift gears now and talk about response to actual emergency situations. When an actual emergency occurs, we want to be sure that we're taking the necessary steps to ensure that we're responding correctly and we're communicating effectively. For example, and I mentioned this before, we use the incident command system as a response tool to organize staff and to ensure that all aspects of the response are covered. So in an incident command scenario, some examples of the roles include the person who is the incident commander, the person in charge of the situation. Then we also have student and staff accountability teams. We have first aid teams. We have teams that engage in search and rescue. We have a family reunification team, and we have a trauma support team. All of these are different roles that we make sure that all of our staff have a hand in so that they know what to do in an actual emergency situation. And as mentioned earlier, through our law enforcement partnerships, we have very quick reactions in emergency situations, and we've received very strong support from police when needed. Many of you may know about a recent incident we had at Edmonds-Woodway High School back in the fall where a student had a handgun in a classroom. And the response we received from the Edmonds police in that situation was remarkable. Within 3 minutes, the principal had called 911 and was still on the phone with dispatch as the first police officers were arriving on scene. So our response from our local jurisdictions is outstanding. We really value our partnerships with our local law enforcement. We also use a system called Parent Square for communication. Many of you have experienced that recently with our technology outages. And this system allows us to send emergency messages to families through phone calls, emails, and text messages. In addition, we also use social media as a means to distribute information about what is happening at our schools. And finally, in the event of an actual emergency, as I mentioned before, we have the ability to stand up what we call our Emergency Operations Center here at the SC. And this allows us to communicate more effectively through radio systems that operate on frequencies that work when nothing else will. And we also have the ability to communicate through power fail phones, which I think I said. So I want to talk now about post-emergency recovery measures. So what do we do after an emergency? So we want to make sure that we have plans and processes in place to help us return to normal operations as soon as we possibly can. So our post-event measures include following an event at one or more schools. All of our schools have family reunification plans, which provide for a process to ensure that all of our students and family members are reunited safely. Our communications team assists in developing clear messaging to students, families, and the community with information related to the incident. And we also utilize what's called a prepare team response. Prepare emphasizes preparation for response to emergency situations, but also supports post-emergency response by reaffirming perceptions of safety and security, by responding to mental health needs, and by providing specific interventions for students who may be impacted by the incident. The focus of prepare is in supporting schools' ability to return to normal operations as soon as possible, with assistance from the team providing support for students who may need it. And lastly, after every serious incident, we work with our schools to conduct what are called after-action reviews to address what went well and what needs to be improved with regard to our response to the incident. So lastly, I want to touch really quickly on what still needs to be developed for our comprehensive safety plan. While we have many pieces in place, probably one of our greatest needs is to develop the preventive measure that focuses on providing a strong focus on social-emotional learning. We know that as we continue to recover from the pandemic and the interruptions to schooling that resulted, we have many students who are struggling socially and emotionally. Having a consistent curriculum and instructional approach to supporting the social-emotional needs of our students is one of the important components of our plan that we need to address. We do have many examples of our schools that are taking this on at their individual sites, and we have worked to implement approaches to SEL, But again, our goal is to develop a consistent approach that is guaranteed for all students, regardless of which school they attend. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to ask you what questions, observations, or wonderings you have about our comprehensive safety plan. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it, and great questions, and I appreciate the conversation. And to the students that came, thank you, and I appreciate hearing your voices. And we are going to work with your schools to address those concerns. We have some good information that we need to follow up on, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.